We had Atari Japan that we ended up selling to Namco. Atari Japan actually put Namco in the video game business.
Wow.
Before that, the only thing they did were kiddie rides.
Why did you end up selling it to Namco? What?
Okay, we were young and dumb, and it turns out that in order to establish a business in Japan, you need all kinds of regulations, none of which we did. We actually started it by taking suitcases full of money, cash, and we rented a building, and we hired people.
In Tokyo? Or
in Tokyo.
Oh, man.
And it was a thing where all of a sudden, they kind of started catching up to us, and we thought, okay, this is not good. Maybe we can sell it.
Did you make a profit on the thing?
We actually did.
Nice. All's well that ends well.
Yeah, but it was just, there's an interesting story there too. Pong for the home did not do well in Japan.
Too much space?
Kids wouldn't have their friends over. There wasn't a place. Homes were too small, and so kids would meet in a coffee shop or a karaoke center or something like that, but not at home. So the game that took off in Japan was actually Breakout. That's what established the consumer game market in Japan.
We had a coin-op lab with the current leading coin-op games in it. They're in the VCS division. So we had a Pac-Man coin-op around, and honestly, it didn't really grab me the way Defenders did. Defenders was the game that really sung to me. Bob Pilar remembers this differently than I remember it, but the boss at that time, Dennis Coble, said, okay, there's 2 projects to be done, Pac-Man and Defenders. And Bob said to me, I don't see how to do Pac-Man, so I'll do Defender. The thing that made the dots was what's called Playfield. So Playfield was for, in the 1975 arcade games, was the chunky stuff you were driving around that was static, that was just fixed, that you couldn't change. But you could actually get in on the 2600 and change the playfield on the fly. Now, the maze is basically what Playfield was for. Using the playfield for the dots was not what Playfield was for, but we did. It wasn't easy, but basically, in the same way you could chop the screen up into vertical slices, you could say, in this slice, when I get to this part of this slice, I'm going to go through and change the background as we go across the screen. But if you actually want to change them during the gameplay, if you want the second half of the screen to be different from the first half of the screen, you actually have to go and rewrite the playfield registers while the electron beam is moving across the screen. And that is doable, and that is how I did the dots. And then after that, we had discovered Flickr. Now, Flickr and Pac-Man is a big deal. One of the things you can do is just say, I've got 2 things that you can draw. 1975, 2 of those was great. Now we had 5 of them on the screen that mattered. Pac-Man has 4 ghosts and a Pac-Man and a fruit, which is actually 6 things that you would call players in some of our parlance, or sprites in normal video game parlance. And they are, they're little cartoon characters. And they change across the screen like the dots you're picking up. They're just little pucks, little ones. And there's only 2 of those. So Flickr happened, right? Flickr happens by saying, I'm going to always play the Pac-Man, and I have 4 ghosts, and I'm going to draw one of them every 4th frame. And that's it. And then the ghosts are sitting there. They're on for a frame and off for 3, and then on for a frame and off for 3, and it looks horrible. And people know that. And I do so, and I say, look, they're ghosts. I mean, you could see them. They were good enough. I made this decision in Pac-Man to support the 2-player game. So for me, what I consider to be really important about the coin-op game, and a lot of coin-op games do this, they're 2-player games. You come up, you put in 2 quarters, player 1's up, player 1 gets through however far and then loses, dies. And then player 2 comes up and plays their screen, and when they die, player 1 comes back and their screen is saved where they left off. Right, so this is, you're both progressing, basically to see who can get the furthest, right? So you have to pick up where you left off for that. Storing what your score was, which is not that bad, but where all of the dots were and what level you were on in terms of difficulty, used, I'm going to say, a lot of ROM. And I laugh when I say a lot of ROM because a lot of ROM was like 22 bytes, right? But 22 bytes is a good chunk out of 128. Oh, there's 128 bytes of RAM. What's the problem? What are you whining about, Todd? But in that case, that was a decision I made. I really looked forward to people in living rooms having the coin-op experience, having a more social experience than watching another person play the game straight through and then taking turns that way.
I can recount, knowing that Pac-Man was coming, we did a pre-order and we went to Sears. I got the Sears Telegames version of it, the black box version. Our whole family hopped in the station wagon. We went to go and we waited in line. We would play 2-player and hand off to the next, because it was my mom, my dad, and my brother. and we played this game 2-player quite often, and we had our own kind of tournament kind of going on in the family and everything like that. But I was when we think about it as a multiplayer game,
It never occurred to me that it didn't have to be a 2-player game.
I love that it was a 2-player game.
But I imagine people sitting on their couch in their living room with their buddy after school playing a game and going to the other game.
So I had it timed to precision because when I was in school, we had a half-hour lunch. I lived about 5 minutes away from the school. So my friend and I would run home. And the importance of having a 2-player mode was it kept it fair. Because if one of us just started playing, the other person didn't get a turn.
Right.
And I think that after they just play through all
Until
their lives.
the whole games, right?
Yeah. And so that really sucked. So 2-player mode was essential when you had very time critical.
Well,
play.
kind of not just that. I imagine that the whole emotional dynamic of, okay, my turn. I'll see how I do with this life.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now it's my life. And then yours, it's like, and like I get what you just said, the alteration is at a finer grain.
Yeah.
So you both get more kind of, you get maybe the same amount of playtime total.
But we went from a very competitive, when it was just one game at a time, to us actually kind of like cooperatively wanting each person to do really well. I don't know what the psychological reason for that was.
The Friday before the Monday that I started, the Activision crew left. They all just like up and left to form Activision. They wanted their name on the titles and they wanted royalties. So after a year or so, after a couple years, a bunch of my friends left to form a company. I did another Activision. They left to form a company called Imagic. And then one of the Atari engineers got hooked up with a major Hollywood outfit and started talking about doing another Activision Imagic, not a deal where we actually got compensated at like a fraction of the profits of the products we did. You know, like Atari was paying engineers $35,000 a year to make 2 games that sold $500,000 each with a $20 or $15 margin. So they were making bank and paying reasonable salaries for something that actually some of us were the only people who could do at that point at a reasonable rate. And one day I went into my boss's office and I said to him, "George, I really like working here, but it's starting to cost me money." So they created a royalty program. The next week, it was 10 cents a cart, which is a pittance, actually. We were not businessmen. We were software engineers. We were pocket protector, thick glass nerds. We were nerds and burnout hippie nerds, and we were not Steve Jobs. We were not going, no, 10 cents isn't enough. We went, oh, that's great. And that was like in very early March. And then Pac-Man sold 3 million copies in 2 weeks. And in early April, I got a check for $300,000, and that was awesome. So my last name is Fry, F-R-Y-E. And there's a boot company. Someone in CoinOp, someone had gotten a big poster for Fry boots and written in large letters at the top, "Why Fry?" It's there's a thing in Logic layout where if you put a line across the top of something, it's a not. So I took a big black pen and put a black line across the top of the Y, because why not Fry? I am the oldest I have ever been. Got the whole rest of my life ahead of me. It's the longest since those times. And I actually am kind of having some kind of pensive retrospection. It's like I wasn't really attuned to the impact that giving me $1 million had on people who were actually I'm going to say this is going to gag coming out of my throat, even more technically capable than I was, who could have done a better job of Pac-Man if that had been their role. And I just, why me? It's just right, the not wrong person at just the right place at just the right time.
First the Pac-Man eats through a maze of dots. Then the Pac-Man heads for the corner spots. Then he eats his fill of a power pill. And then all those ghosts turn blue. Boo! And Pac-Man eats them all too.
Only Atari makes the Pac-Man home video game, and you can only play it on an Atari video game system.
Have you played Atari today? First the Pac-Man eats through a maze of dots. Then the Pac-Man heads for the corner spots. Then he eats his fill of a power pill. And then all those ghosts turn blue. Boo! And
when I play this version of Pac-Man, I actually have some really fond memories of it because I played this game with my dad, and we thought this was the greatest thing ever when it came out. We're big Pac-Man fans. The difference between this and, say, the arcade game, there were obvious differences, of course. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on why, like what the approach was and why some of these decisions are, say, for instance, like even the play field and the colors versus like the arcade game? What was behind some of that?
There was a rule at Atari that you couldn't use a black background unless you were a space game.
Yeah.
And you know, the reason for that is because these televisions, these CRTs, have phosphor screens back then, and you could get burn-in.
I was going to say, that still happens today even with OLEDs. I noticed because I've played the Atari on an OLED, and I've played this game called Mousetrap, and it has pure black.
Well, we had a rule, and and again, I've said this, I don't think there's anyone who says, wow, the game is way better with that blue background. But there are a lot of people who say, why isn't it the arcade colors?
Yeah.
That's the answer. And I think it would have been probably better if it had the arcade colors. Now, what I'm fascinated by looking back is that no one in the signal path between me and out there went, oh, maybe we should give this game a, a pass on that rule. Well, the thing about these video games is that back then it was so new that I don't know, that you could walk up to a game and say what the most important features were. Now, I walked up to this game and said, well, ghosts, Pac-Man, dots, power pills, maze, right? I think there are some things that make Pac-Man Pac-Man.
Yep.
But we didn't know back then how much which less essential features were salient. My father had a pizza shop on Ocean Avenue in San Francisco in like the early 60s. And I used to go there when I was like 7 and 8. And there's this little pharmacy, and they had these comic books, which were great literature abridged versions, right? of like, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but
I
it's
have.
like,
I think I know what you're talking about.
it's like, here's Treasure Island.
Exactly.
Here's pick another book whose name I forget.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. War and Peace,
Yep.
which, was 12 pages.
Extremely abridged.
Extremely abridged. And so I thought of this as being that, because we were not going to be able to get, like, for instance, Pac-Man has a very distinct process. After I was done with this, I went with Jim Andreasen to Tokyo, to Namco, for them to explain how Pac-Man worked for the 400-800 version.
Yeah.
And each ghost has a separate algorithm for how it moves. When it comes to a decision point, I could never have done that with the amount of RAM and ROM I have. Yeah. Instead of having that algorithm for each player, I'm actually very proud of this. When they come out, I put it all together, and when they came out, all 4 ghosts were totally stuck together the first time I ran it. Because they all went the exact same. And it's like, whoa, I'm only getting,
There they go.
And so what I actually did, when Ghost comes to an intersection, it has a choice of moving in your direction or moving randomly. And there's some odds, right? How smart they are. In later levels, actually, the odds that they will move towards you are higher.
Yeah.
And then I take the ghost numbers, 0, 1, 2, and 3, that's 2 bits. And I take the low order bit and I tweak the odds by which they will move towards you by adding that 1 bit into the percentage of tracking you. That makes them smart and smarter.
And unique personality.
And that's a unique personality. And then I take the second bit and add that to the speed it moves. So each ghost has a repeatable personality. Each ghost has a unique personality. This has slightly smarter and slower, slightly smarter and faster, slightly less smart and slower, and it's not this, So they're all, they separate now.
Yeah.
And they each have a perfectly predictable behavior. My ghosts, their decisions are all made by either a generated signal or your position at that time. So if it comes to an intersection and it's supposed to choose whether to go towards you or away from you, it will be the same choice every time if you have done the same thing up till then. As long as you repeat your pattern, the ghosts will repeat their pattern, just like in real Pac-Man. And I am really proud of that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Right. Do you remember how many they built to put into distribution?
I've been told, so I know I was paid royalties on 3 million for March.
Okay.
So I know that, I think they may have actually either shipped 3 million worth of boxes to retailers, or retailers may have actually sold at cash register 3 million. I don't know which. I was paid royalty for like 11 million Pac-Mans.
Oh, wow. You're watching television, there's TV shows on it, could be Friends, it could be like so many TV series, and somebody's playing a video game, they have an Xbox controller, it doesn't matter what they have, but what do you hear when you're watching it? You hear Pac-Man. It's either Pac-Man or Donkey Kong.
You hear this Pac-Man.
You hear this Pac-Man, and that gonk, gonk, gonk sound. Like, these sounds, you created all these sounds in this game.
I created all of these sounds.
How do you feel when you hear this?
It's actually really interesting, because really thinking about it, what that means is that for our generation, the 11 to 15 million copies that went out, actually, people who are making those soundtracks think people will relate to this sound. This is like...
It's become the video game sound.
It's become the video game sound, but it was the video game sound.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really the breakthrough video game that went from games selling 100,000, maybe 1 in 10 games or 1 in 20 games might sell 1 million.
Yeah.
To it sold 10 million.
It's crazy.
It's the explosion.
I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending the 3rd International Conference on Science and Technology. This afternoon,
What
our
the heck
agenda
is that?
Well, I don't know, but that's another one.
Good gracious, there goes another one.
They're multiplying.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin. Mysterious underground creatures are moving your way.
We have a problem here.
Come on, everybody, take a chance. We're going underground to do the dig dug dance. First you tunnel through a wall of dirt, burrow under rocks without being hurt. Quick now, turn around, what do you do?
For that.
Running after you.
Dig dug, dig dug.
見て見て。もしもし。おい。Here, look at here. Look at see.
Days down deep in the ground, when a flower sprouts up, you're playing around, but you gotta have an airtight.
Where are your women now, huh?
Survive.
Where are your women now?
As your score gets
Yes, sir.
higher, they multiply.
All right, let's get cracking. Oh, you always want to go mining.
Dig dog, say something.
Hello?
Just like a bazooka, use it to
They're called hookahs, five and dig dug.
What are they doing? What happened? Eat all the veggies and
All they want is for us to play them so we can all have a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Dig Dug's the greatest fighter of them all. Dig Dug. Dig Dug. Can you dig it?
Galaxian warriors, today we're going up against the most feared commander, and everyone counts. Even you, Quid.
Man your ships. Man your ships. Man your ships.
We're going in.
Assume attack formation. All wings ready, sir. Okay, I'm peeling off. Cover me. Cover me.
Roger on that, Blue Leader.
Heavy fire, 17 degrees.
Affirmative. This guy's good.
Watch your back.
We lost Blue Leader.
I'm hit. Who's left?
Quid.
No!
Quid, you're a credit to your cartridge. Galaxian, the arcade hit, now for the Atari 2600 system.
the job at General Computer was actually my first job. They had just inked a deal with Warner, Atari's parent at the time, to do a whole bunch of games, and they didn't have enough people to do it. So, they were happy to find more people. And they said, can you program something with 128 bytes of RAM? And I thought they meant 128K, which was a reasonable amount at the time, only to find out later when I showed up that it was much smaller. And it was a great experience. One of the reasons that Warner came to General Computer was they thought that they would get a more professional atmosphere and work product. But again, there was fun. We had a fire pole to get from the second floor to the first floor. We had an arcade. We played games on our coffee breaks. Everybody was really, really, really top notch. In '83, GCC hired more MIT graduates than any other company besides IBM and Xerox. So everybody was really good. And I was one of the oldest people. I think I was all of 27 or something. Glenn Parker was actually part of that team as well. For Galaxian, it was just Glenn and myself. Glenn was a great programmer, and he was doing the gameplay. I was doing the graphics part because I wanted to learn how to do that. We could ask each other questions or whatever, and he was sitting right in back of me, or I guess on the other side of me. And so we could bounce things off of each other on a constant basis. There was also Patty Goodson, who did the music and some of the early graphics, because I can't draw and I can't do music. The music is actually really hard on the Atari 2600 because it's not a full octave. She had to kind of skip parts to make it sound right. So that was really great that she could do that. I don't know how long that would have taken us to do it. The other problem, though, was that the graphics on the Atari couldn't really handle the number of sprites that were available in the actual Galaxians. If you remember Space Invaders, it was really only 6 across because that was the standard thing. I will I'll give myself a little credit here, but I managed to discover through, again, kind of random luck, a way to get 8 things on a line and be able to turn them off and on. And that was really just hacking the code and freaking out the chip so that it did things that weren't part of the spec. And that's, I think, what really made the game. And then, of course, we went to the Consumer Electronics Show where it was shown for the first time. And it was, again, quite an ego stroke to kind of stand there and watch the programmers from other companies come and go, how did they do that? And so, that I was kind of standing off to the side so I could kind of watch. So, I think Patty did a really nice job with the music and the sound effects, and the visuals were at least looked real. And, the graphics weren't as chunky as they were on earlier games. I mean, Atari gave it to us at GCC because they thought it was an impossible cartridge. And so, to be able to come back and say, oh, by the way, we figured out how to make it work was really a big win.
It's not termites. It isn't mice. It's Dig Dug, the new video game cartridge from Atari. Console sold separately and hooked up by an adult. You dig for balloon men.
Yeah.
You dig for dragons. You can dig yourself into all sorts of trouble. The question is, can you dig yourself out? Dig Dug, the Atari video game cartridge. Versions available for all Atari systems. Console sold separately.
We were doing things that weren't possible. Xevious was not possible. I was the third engineer assigned Xevious. I was working on my Sword Quest Air World, I Ching-based game, and they asked someone to do Xevious. And they said, I can't do that. And they gave it to someone else for a couple of weeks. Again, I won't name names. He said, I can't do that. So they said, Todd. And I did something. But it was not possible. There was not a snowball's chance in hell of making Xevious work on the Atari 2600. So what we had to do was find the essence. Polara's Defender captures the essence of Defender. You can tell it's Defender. It's got a lot of flicker. Pac-Man captures the essence of Pac-Man. You can tell it's Pac-Man. It's got a lot of flicker. Xevious has the scrolling background, which is totally doable, and it's got something like up to 20 moving objects on the screen without flicker. They're all in little horizontal slices. But it's not only they're in horizontal slices, but they're actually in two horizontal slices scrolling over each other at different speeds. And that is awesome. It's like, it is an awesome piece of software that captured the essence. So what is it that's fun about that? It's like, so Xevious has a lot of stuff going on in the air. And there's a lot of different things that can be flying at you fast. And then it also has things going on the ground. So you have two planes, you got these tanks on the ground that you can shoot with ground shooting bullets. You got these things in the sky that you can shoot with sky shooting bullets. You don't have to worry about running into the things on the ground, but they might shoot at you. And you do have to worry about dodging. It's fast. This is what made Xevious appealing at that time. People had learned enough about playing these games that they could effectively play 2 games at the same time. Shoot the thing on the ground and dodge from and shoot the things in the sky, which maybe people would not have. Actually, it's funny to think about again. Weird. 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier, 7 years earlier, when combat was the game, people might not have been able to play Xevious. I invented a way to intertwine multiple display drivers on this 2600 screen. I did this for Rob Dibble's NFL football game, where we wanted the players in their little horizontal slices, right? But I wanted 2 horizontal slices. I wanted 1 horizontal slice for the blue team and 1 horizontal slice for the red team. I stayed until 1 o'clock that morning, and I left it on Rob's screen so that when he came in, there were 2 sets of objects vertically scrolling, X's and O's, red X's and blue O's, going like this because they're running on completely separate screens, they thought. The red screen was keeping track of its vertical positions and was completely separated from the blue screen, but they were intertwined. So if you turn the blue screen off, the red screen would be going like this. You turn the red screen off and put the blue screen on, it'd be going like this. You put both on and they're going like that. And it's really cool. I mean, it was a eureka moment. But in Xevious, I needed something like 3 or 4 separate sets of objects. There's stuff coming down and shooting at you. And you need my shots going up. And you need the ground moving down and the things moving on the ground. Yeah, miscellaneous, nightmarish wizardry in there. I mean, I get a really high moving, get a really high graphics complexity count up there on Xevious for the 2600. I used everything for the moving objects, right? Gray tanks moving across the ground, all kinds of different stuff flying in the sky. Those were all in one sprite, and they were vertically separated. But if you separate them across enough, it kind of looks like a bunch of stuff. You can't quite tell that there's only one stream of them coming. If there's some over here and some over here, and they're moving like this, it looks plenty complex. But I was out of things. I have to keep track of where the player is. And what I decided to do was to use a 4-bit wide missile and horizontally position it just a little bit to make it a little bit of a comma, upside down comma shape, and then flip it the next screen. It flickered to be an upside. So I made kind of an upside down V ship out of the single bit of the missile. That's the ship. It's the missile. In the same way, that's funny, in the same way that I made the fruit out of a ball and a missile. I mean, this is how close you are to scraping the bottom of the barrel when you're doing impossible coin-op conversions on the Atari 2600. Oh, I'll make a piece of graphics that in the coin-op is a sweet-looking little cherry. I will make out of a blue block with a orange block inside of it. And that seemed like a good idea at the time, and it was. And I will take a single pixel of graphics and make it into a V-shaped ship. It's like that is like really reaching down to the very last drop.